Hey everyone, how's it going and welcome back. A couple of weeks ago I started into renovating the old polytunnel by giving it a really good clear out. If you haven't already seen that video, it's linked up here. And that's all part of this year's project, which is to create a working, productive vegetable garden and polytunnel setup here in my garden. But it's not only the inside that needs work done, it's the area outside as well. So let's have a bit of a walk around. I'll show you what the problems are and how I'm going to solve them. So the area around the outside of the polytunnel simply doesn't work for me. And it's not just for one reason, it's for a whole load of different things that on their own aren't actually an issue, but when they combine, they really do become an issue. The first thing is you can see that the polytunnel is squeezed into a fairly narrow space. It's got a beech hedge on one side, and what that does is it creates these kind of narrow passageways down the side and round the front of the polytunnel. That means that these areas become really concentrated high tread areas that are either getting trampled on by boots or rolled over with wheelbarrows. In itself, that wouldn't be an issue, except that the area is just covered with grass. That grass needs to be maintained, which I'm not really very good at. Because this area is down the back of the garden, I tend to neglect it a little bit, and you can see that the grass has grown pretty long. So it's a bit of an annoying job to have to do. It just adds more workload. And then in the winter, when it's wet, which it normally is in Ireland, these high tread areas start to become really squishy and mushy. And in fact, I don't know if you can hear this. That's how wet this is at the moment. So really, these areas just don't work the way they are. But I've got a plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around with the strimmer just to lift the very worst of the long grass and weeds off. Then I'm going to put down a layer of Mypex, which is a really good quality landscape fabric, pin that down, and then I'm going to cover it with a nice deep layer of Woodchip. And it's not just the areas around the side of the polytunnel that are a problem. The area right outside the front door of the polytunnel isn't exactly ideal either. It's getting really muddy and trampled as well. There are parts right in front of it that I think maybe used to have stuff planted in them. They're pretty much bare soil, and that bare soil is an absolute weed magnet. There's a couple of pavers at the front door. They get so slippy all the time that they're a death trap. I want them covered so that I don't end up injuring myself. And there's stuff that just needs tidied. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to get the stuff tidied and get started with the strimmer. So I want to take down all the grass and the weeds here really short because I'm going to be putting the landscape fabric on top of it. But I also want to take it short really neatly up to the edge of the plastic. So time for a top tip. Do not make the mistake that I have done in the past and think that you're accurate enough with your strimmer to get nice and close to the polytunnel. Trust me, I have cut a hole in the plastic before and it doesn't feel good. So instead, grab yourself a piece of wood, slide it down like that, and then you can run along with your strimmer. It's not going to catch the plastic and you'll get a really nice tight edge. See what I mean? It works an absolute treat. I'm sure it's not only the eagle-eyed amongst you that noticed that the polytunnel is looking really pretty covered in algae and needs a really good clean. Well, there's a reason I haven't done it yet, and that's because using the strimmer, not only am I covered in little bits of shredded grass and muck, so is the polytunnel. So I wanted to get that job done first before I washed it. Also, like I was saying, because everywhere gets so muddy, I don't want to be washing this and adding even more water to this. It's just going to turn into a total quagmire. So I'm going to get all the work done, get the wood chip laid, and then I'll start to think about washing this thing. But now that we've got all of the grass trimmed down and it's nice and short, the next thing to do is to cover it with the landscape fabric. And this is what I'm using. This is called Mypex, and it's a manufactured landscape fabric that's black. And this is really good quality stuff. The reason it's good is it acts as a physical barrier to prevent weed growth, but because it's black and really tightly woven, it also blocks out a lot of light, which stops a lot of things being able to either germinate or continue growing. The other thing is it's really hard wearing, so it works really nicely if you want to have it as an underlay layer, to have maybe a path material, which is exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to be putting wood chip down on top of it. So I bought a really big roll of this. I've already used a whole load of it when I was working in the courtyard garden a couple of months ago, but I've still got plenty to use. This is about 1.5 meters wide, which should work quite nicely. So I'm going to start rolling it out. I had this grand plan that I was going to take this epic shot for the episode where I'd roll this landscape fabric down this little narrow bit and it would look amazing. And then I realized that that simply wasn't going to work because it was too wide. So as you can see, I've got the fabric laid out down this bit. And the reason I couldn't roll it out is I want to have excess on either side. On the side of the polytunnel, I'm going to have about 3 or 4 inches of excess. That's just going to give me a little bit of room to play with as I start to put down the wood chip. I'm not sure exactly what depth I'm going to go for yet, but that's going to give me some options. And then on this side, I intentionally want a lot of overlap, and that's because I'm going to use it to help the hedge as well. Loads and loads of weeds grow underneath this hedge, and actually if I can tuck this landscape fabric in underneath and then get it pinned down, I can push some of the wood chip a little bit further in. It'll make it look like it's got a nice neat edge, and what it'll do is it's going to suppress the weeds that grow underneath here. I think that'll work really nicely. So now that I've got this bit roughly laid out, it's time to pin it down. So now that it's time to pin down the landscape fabric, let's talk about landscape fabric pins, or more specifically, not to do what I did previously. When I was putting down the Mypex in the courtyard garden, I've got videos about that. I made these myself out of wire that I had, thinking that I was going to save loads of money and it was going to be great. Well, long story short, it took me forever to make dozens and dozens of these, and they didn't do the job because they were just too weak and too small. So I did a bit of internet research on a very well-known internet retailer. The link for these I'll put in the description down below, and I found these 100 metal landscape fabric pins for only £7.99, and they are so much better. They've got sharp ends for pushing into the ground really easily. They're nice and long, strong wire, and a nice flat edge at the top, so it'll sit flush. This is definitely an example of where sometimes it's worth researching whether just buying what you need is better than trying to make it yourself. So now I'm going to get stuck in with these and start pinning down all of this landscape fabric. just in time because it started raining after a whole load of rolling and flattening out and pinning down. I've got all of the landscape fabric down, and check it out, it looks so good. Even without the wood chip on top, it's such an improvement. If you compare it to what it looked like a couple of hours ago, where there were weeds and mud and it just looked really disheveled, it already looks so much more neat and so much more practical. And have a look around here. And I've got this area done as well. Landscape fabric down, check. Pinned in place, check. And it's ready to go, ready for its layer of wood chip. So that's going to be coming next week. Make sure to tune in next Sunday for that. I'll be making the wood chip, getting it laid down, and we'll have a look and see, is it an improvement and is it better than what it was like before? But as ever, leave a comment down below because I love hearing from you. If you enjoyed the video today, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit that bell icon and make sure to select all, and then that way you'll be notified when I post my next video. And until next time, see you later.